Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Geeked Out. My name is Kyle.
Juan here.
This week marks the first episode in our six-part series that we've titled Highly Underrated Movies. Juan had the pick for this week, and the movie that he chose was Strange Wilderness. Now, this movie was originally released on February 1st of 2008. It's about a failing nature and animal documentary show. It has one last shot before they're taken off the air to save themselves. And in the nick of time, they're given a map to the location of Bigfoot. So off they go to get the footage and save their show. It was directed by Fred Wolf. It stars Steve Zahn, Alan Covert, Jonah Hill, Justin Long, and Kevin Heffernan, or as many people would know him as Farva from Super Troopers. It currently has a rating on IMDb of 5.2 out of 10.
Not bad.
On Rotten Tomatoes, it gets bad because it has a 2% critic score with an audience rating of 35%. And if that wasn't bad enough, the budget for this movie was $20 million. And I don't know if you've looked this up, but if you haven't, I want you to take a guess. If you have, it's cheating. But what do you think it brought in?
I don't know, man. $1 billion?
Considerably less than $1 billion.
Well, that's what it should have got.
This movie made
That's what it should have got.
$6.9 million. So it lost $13.1 million.
That's not fair, man, because no one's seen it. I blame marketing. It's marketing. You know how it be sometimes with marketing, and you got a good movie on your hands, but for some reason you don't put the money into marketing and no one sees it.
Well, I will say this movie came out in February, which is typically when...
Oh, that's the graveyard back in the day.
I mean, sometimes it still can be, but yeah, especially back then, this was kind of where movies would go to die. If your movie was released in February, it wasn't expected to do a whole lot, and if it did well, it was like a huge phenomenon.
Yeah, they had absolutely no faith in the movie that they made at all. So yeah, that makes sense. Being released in February, but
I'm surprised they didn't have any faith in this movie because it is a Happy Madison production, and I mean, even if the premise of the movie isn't what they were kind of hoping for or anything like that, it's still got the backing of Adam Sandler's production company behind it. You would think that a name like that would at least give some kind of gravitas to at least have them release it at a normal or more popular time.
You would think, but I guess if Adam Sandler's name's not exactly attached to it, then it's not. It's not. Because there've been a lot of Happy Madison production that I think most of them don't do well if Adam Sandler isn't directly involved.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
I could be wrong.
No, I think you're pretty much right on that because, I mean, if he's in it, obviously he's the main front and center. Everybody knows that he's in this movie. It's automatically right off the bat, oh, it's an Adam Sandler movie. Whereas something like this, it's like, oh, Happy Madison, and if you don't know what that is, I mean, everybody knows who Adam Sandler is, but if you don't know what Happy Madison is, it's like nobody cares. I mean, you and I know because we're fucking movie nerds.
Yeah, we know these things. But yeah, most of the Gen Pop aren't really going to know.
So I will say I had never seen this movie before, so this was my first viewing. Was this a movie theater or a rental and have you seen it since it came out? Like, is this something that you've regularly rewatched, or has it been a while?
I'd say so. It's been probably a couple years since I rewatched it, just because we live in a day and age where there's too much content.
That's for damn sure.
Before like the big boom in like TV and movies and streaming, it was a movie I regularly watched. But it has been a few years since my rewatch.
Okay. Again, I have nothing to compare this to because this was my first viewing. Did it hold up to what you remember?
Oh yeah. For sure. It did, man. I get why not a lot of people would even be fans of this, because it's a niche. It's a niche in the comedy genre. It's the stoner comedy, and it doesn't get as good as a rep as other comedies. I guess you really have to understand that humor, and that has to kind of be your humor, I guess, if you could potentially be a fan of this movie. So I get it. You have to be very juvenile to to get what they were going for with this, and it may not be for everybody, but I know the people who do like this movie, they also find it an underrated comedy.
Well, I'm gonna.
Oh, this motherfucker is about to stab me. Like fucking what's his
I
name?
dude, I
Johnny
can't.
Johnny Bats and fucking Goodfellas. Gonna
Oh,
stab me
Billy
in the front.
Bats.
Billy Bats.
Dude, I can't. I can't get behind this movie.
I had a feeling you were gonna say
I'm
something like
okay. Okay. Overall, I thought the movie was quite funny. However, I thought there were a lot of gags that became really played out very fast. Another thing that I wasn't really crazy on is some of the gags and the jokes just go on for too long. It's like that. I always refer to it as like the Family Guy chicken syndrome, or not the Family Guy chicken, but the Family Guy like when Peter hits his knee, and it's the gag of him grabbing his knee and the that goes on for like a minute longer than it needs to. I found there was a lot of stuff in this movie that was like that. Um, I will say that the funniest part for me of the entire movie was the first like 15, 20 minutes or so when like everybody's introduced and it's more dialogue based. When it started getting into like the physical humor later and that stuff, I wasn't really crazy on.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
And I mean,
Like
now,
it
now,
worked for you, but about halfway.
now don't get me wrong. If you like you said you categorize this as a stoner comedy. If I was high, this movie would have been out of this world. I guaranteed. But
Under the
because
under the yeah. I see what you're saying. Yeah,
because I was not, I mean,
that's
because I was not, and I was watching it with a bit more of a critical eye. It just a lot of it didn't really hit for me.
yeah,
Um,
I
and I
see what you're-
and I think even some of it is seeing some of these actors and knowing what else they've done that is so much better, or even just so much funnier. It kind of all fell flat for me, anyways. In general,
I see what you're saying. Um, for the most part, it worked for me, but I do see where you're coming from. There's a couple characters that or even in general, like a lot of it's laid on too thick, and
yeah.
I see that. But for me, it worked. Unfortunately, comedy is so subjective, and it's from the eye of the beholder that like something that even stars a lot of the people involved in a movie that's a similar style of comedy, it works one way and it doesn't work the other, because I put this side by side with another super underrated comedy, Grandma's Boy.
Don't you dare.
I put it right next to it, man. To me, that's what I'm saying. Comedy is so subjective, man. And,
I
like
get it.
I laugh just as much in that movie than I do the other. But, you know, Grandma's Boy is a notch up, but slightly. Only
I
because more of like the inside joke or the gags, I guess, worked. It didn't feel like it was laid on too thick. But there are characters that are a bit too much in that movie too. Like the I to me, both movies are about the same level, but with Grandma's Boy being just a notch above. But
so
again, that's me.
I think what works more about a movie like Grandma's Boy, which to me is leaps and bounds better than this, Is Grandma's Boy, you actually have an antagonist. Like, there are several things, but one of them being Grandma's Boy, you actually have an antagonist through the movie. This movie, you had an antagonist in the host of the other show that's trying to take their place, but he's literally on screen for like a minute in the opening, and then you don't see him again until three-quarters of the way through the movie, and even then you only see him for a couple of minutes and he's gone. Whereas Grandma's Boy, you constantly get that back and forth between the antagonist and the main characters. And also, Grandma's Boy has the dynamic of there's multiple sets throughout the movie. So whether it's him at work or him with his friends or him at home with his grandmother and her roommates, there's different dynamics to the character, where this movie basically just felt like, because 90% of the movie is just basically spent in the jungle or whatever you want to call it, it's just all the same thing. It just kind of all ran together like a big, like just a big glob. Like there was no, nothing to differentiate the depth of any of the characters. But that, I mean, that's just my own personal opinion.
Yeah, of course. No worries. Yeah, I guess if you do appreciate different locations.
Well, it's not even locations. It's showing different depth to the characters and what they deal with at different aspects of their life. I think that's another thing is Grandma's Boy seems like it takes place over a longer period of time, so you get those personality traits more fleshed out, where this seems to feel like, I mean, honestly, this whole movie seems like it feels like it takes place over a span of like 2.5 days.
Yeah, because they didn't really have a whole lot of nighttime type scenes, overnight type scenes. Most of it took place during the day.
Yeah. And what took place at night was lit like garbage.
And I mean, one of the advantages that Grandma's Boy has is like the main character you kind of like and care for. It's not like you don't care about the main character in Strange Wilderness, but he's
kind of a dick.
He's a bit of a lazy, stone. Like he's a pothead. Like he is like a loser. That's what the movie portrays him as, right? So there's nothing to redeem him. There's no, throughout the movie he's kind of the same character. There's not much character development until like maybe the very end. But it didn't. I understand. But with Grandma's Boy, that main character is significantly better.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I
think that, to me, that would be my only like biggest criticism. Would be, their main at least should have been written better, because Steve Zahn's a very good actor. He's he's well rounded, and he could have pulled off a much more sympathetic, or at least character that you would want to see succeed in whatever the adventure calls for, right?
Oh, I agree 100%. Steve Zahn could have done a lot better, and for that I mainly blame the writers, because if there was more to this character, I think he could have really knocked it out of the park. But it just seemed like this character was, like you say, he's just smoke a joint, say stupid lines, yell, and next scene.
Yeah, and that's honestly every freaking character in this movie. I get it. I get it. But I like it, all right? I still like this movie. It still makes me laugh.
Well, another thing that this movie has in common with Grandma's Boy that I kind of chuckled when he came on screen is we get Fat Jonah Hill back.
Oh, yeah, this movie came out, what, 2006?
2008.
2008? Oh, shit. I think Grandma's Boy was 2006. Yeah, I think that's...
Because Grandma's Boy, he was much bigger.
Yeah, and he wasn't really... He was like the side character. Wasn't really even well known back then. When did Superbad come out? 2009?
No. I'm actually not 100% sure. Let me see here. Superbad was 07.
Yeah, okay. I thought it was 7. It was 7. Yeah, so
and Grandma's Boy was '06. So Jonah Hill went back to back to back with he went from a almost nothing role in Grandma's Boy. He's like the fourth or fifth one of the main guy's friends. And then
I think his first role was like the side. He had one scene in 40-Year-Old Virgin. When did that come out?
I want to say that would have been one of the first Judd Apatow big ones.
Yeah, I think that was probably right around
That
that.
was '05.
Okay, yeah.
So you can see the progression of him, and it's funny because for me, as you watch that, you get 40-Year-Old Virgin, you get Grandma's Boy, and then you get Superbad, where he took off and became this
That's
huge star
great.
because of that movie. And then if you look at his performance in this, he falls off a cliff the size of fucking Mount Everest. I mean, I,
I get it.
what
His
is the
character isn't my favorite,
what is the
but
accent that he's trying to do?
I think honestly, I don't know for sure. Especially with like the accent, I have no idea. But like, I think he didn't really have much direction, and a lot of the time, directors will just tell comedic actors to just be funny,
That's
and
cheating.
and the comedians kind of have to work with that. I think that was the case here. I think this was just a decision from Jonah Hill because he just didn't really know what to do really, so he kind of just went with it. It worked in super small doses. There are scenes where it works because it's funny, but as a whole character, it's one of those. It's fine. It's not one of my favorite characters, but it is probably besides Steve Zahn, probably my second least favorite character.
Well, I will say I just looked up the director. His name is Fred Wolf, and he's worked on a lot of big movies. He was a writer on Grown Ups. He was a writer on Joe Dirt. He worked in the script department for Tommy
Yeah,
Boy.
all those
But
movies seem like movies that depended on the actor's performance, not the
but
direction.
the movies he has directed. Okay, so Strange Wilderness was his first. He then went on the same year. He directed The House Bunny with Anna Faris.
Oh,
His
okay.
his next movie was Joe Dirt 2,
Oh no! No!
which I thankfully have never seen.
I ain't never seen that shit.
And then everything else he's done, I've never heard of.
Hey man, he had one good movie. It was Strange Wilderness, and he fell off.
I don't think he had a good movie. I mean, I will say so. In the first like 5-10 minutes of this movie, I will say I was cracking up. I was laughing my ass off, and I thought, okay, this is a really good sign. And then, just like with Jonah Hill's acting, it went off a very steep cliff.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Again,
And like,
somebody's objective. Somebody.
I will say I liked when they're showing one of the funnier things I thought was the a lot of Steve Zahn's voiceovers, or when he was trying to read like what his lines were going to be when they were actually filming the show. And as I'm watching it, like, and I'm sure you just as much as I have seen quite a few different like nature and animal documentaries, and you know how those guys sound. It's like they're literally reading out of a textbook almostly, whereas Steve Zahn just sounds like a guy sitting at a bar. Like, and we've all done this. If you're sitting at a bar and there's something on a TV and there's no sound to it, you and your buddies will just kind of do the lines as a joke, like
Just
over
riff.
top of what they're saying. It sounded like that's what he was doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely that's what they were going for. And yeah, this movie is one of the movies that it relies a lot on improv and the performance of the actors and his voiceovers. They worked, man.
And I'm not gonna say I didn't like, because I did like quite a few of the lines. Like some of the ones I have written down is when in the opening scene, like one of the opening scenes when he gets I think it's in the trailer, but he gets the notes and it's on like a bar napkin and they're talking about bears.
Bears are brown.
Well, the bears are brown and big, and he's like, not all of them. Some are baby bears.
What about baby bears? Yeah, yeah.
But it was when he's like, bears derive their name from a football team in Chicago.
Yeah, that was funny. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But like stuff like that, I found really funny. There were quite a few later in the movie that I found amusing. Even when they're showing their tape to the station manager when he's basically telling them that they're off the air.
That's my favorite scene in the movie, I think. Honestly, I think that scene is my favorite scene in the entire movie.
Yeah, that
That
was really good.
that has me rolling every time. I'm talking crying every time I watch it. Doesn't matter how many times I watch it. My favorite is, yeah, they're showing all the highlights of the show.
One of the guys is like one of the clips is a guy like burning at a peace
He's on
rally.
fire with
Or
music playing in the background, and he's questioning if it was added on
yeah,
or
it's
was
like
it
some
the rally.
Jesus music
Uh,
or something.
or the random guy that got killed by what was it? A bunch of alligators.
Yeah.
That shit had me. See, that's my kind of humor. Just randomness.
Well, the thing that I
It
found funny is when the
was
camera
perfect.
all of a sudden shows like the four girls that are topless and they're jumping around.
Oh yeah, because he
And he,
went to Africa.
and he's like, these are the women of the African bush. And Steve Zahn goes, well, I don't know if you've seen like any of those National Geographic, but the actual women of the bush aren't really that good looking. So we got these girls from Long Beach.
So funny. And I understand if they would have continued the momentum of the first, the first, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes and scaled it back and didn't make it such of like a Bigfoot thing, and he had more of like those voiceover and you focused more on like him actually doing an animal show
Yeah.
or an animal documentary and showing different animals and stuff like that instead of a Bigfoot type character. That probably would have worked a little bit more.
And
But yeah,
the whole
I
Bigfoot
understand.
thing, the point of the movie was like the point of the whole thing was they were going to go film Bigfoot, but it was all by the time they get to that point, you've almost forgotten what they're doing because all they've been talking about
Oh
is
yeah.
this map the entire time.
And it seems like the movie forgot too, because the way that
Oh,
whole
it's so
situation,
anticlimactic and happens so quickly.
it that would be another negative. This movie would have is definitely that how
But
they handled it.
going back to the earlier part, I did like, and again, it's not. This is another one of those comedies where the funniest parts were in the trailer. Is the eyes tattooed on Justin Long's eyelids?
Oh yeah, he's my favorite character in this movie.
He's probably my favorite actor from this movie.
Yeah, he
Well, maybe Jonah
especially
Hill, but those two would be neck and neck.
early 2000, or even it depends on what you would categorize as early 2000. But those early 2000 Justin Long movies, man,
Jeepers
he
Creepers,
didn't
dude.
he didn't miss. I think every time he was in a movie and he portrayed a character, whether it be comedic or dramatic, in those early 2000 that block, I think he killed it, man. I think it was
I'm gonna
great.
say I'm gonna say one of my favorite characters that he's ever played is not in a movie.
The Bobby Long. Oh, it's not in a movie. Sorry.
Bobby Long.
Is no, is that it's in Zach and Murray Make a Porno, maybe something?
Oh yeah.
Was he Bobby Long or was his husband Bobby Long?
I think his husband was.
Okay.
But I forgot about that one. That's a great cameo that he does.
He knocks it out
No,
of the park.
My favorite character his is not in a movie, and unless you've seen this show, you will not know what I'm talking about because he's not a main character. It's his cameo episodes in Good Girl or New Girl.
Oh no, I never. It's one of those rapid fire joke type shows, right?
It can be, but he plays like so Zoe Deschanel is a teacher and she's really bubbly and happy and this and
I
that.
know the gist of it.
And
I've caught moments of the show. I just never seen a full episode.
well, he plays a guy who is basically like the male version of her.
Okay.
And he again, he does such a great job because Justin Long is one of those people that I compare him a lot to like a Jay Baruchel, where you can, depending on what movie they're in or what role they're playing, you can just see them like you can just see them as that person.
He's like him. Jay, what's his last name?
Baruchel. That's how I pronounce it.
He's like him without the, I guess, the dweebiness. There's a bit of a dweeby vibe.
Yeah, he can. Justin Long can be a little cooler than Jay Baruchel can.
Yeah, there's like a goofiness, or
But if you ever watched Undeclared, Jay Baruchel was pretty cool in that.
I might have.
It was a one season TV show.
I want to say it rings a bell.
It was college.
I'm sure I if it rings a bell, I'm sure I've seen it. If it was a show in the time that I was watching a hell of a lot of TV, I'm sure I've seen it.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure you've seen it here and there, but it wasn't anything that really stuck, so not a lot of people really remember it.
No.
But again, those eyes on his eyelids, I noticed in the very next scene, they're gone.
Oh yeah, because it's.
But he said he got him. He said he got him tattooed. What would have been an easier gag would have been like I drew them on so that you wouldn't know I was sleeping, and then at least in the next scene when they're not there, it makes sense.
True. But the rules are played real fast and loose when it comes to comedy, so
especially this type of comedy.
I guess it
but okay, so for like I said, for me, I really enjoyed it for the first like 10, 15, even maybe 20 minutes or something like that. To me, where the comedy starts to fall off is the scene where they're doing the interviews. Because all of a sudden they're like, oh, we're going to go find Bigfoot. And they're like, we need an animal handler. And it just cuts to the interviews and it's Kevin Heffernan. And then he's like this depressed, I need a job, this and that. I did write down one line with this when they're interviewing him. But as soon as they say they're not going to give him the job, they just start calling in random people. And it's just these people being like, you guys are idiots. And then him and Steve Zahn and Alan Cover just screaming for the next applicant. And this goes on for like 3 minutes. And I'm like, it's not funny. Like, to me, it's, I don't mean to be ragging on the movie that you picked, but I'm just kind of going, again, had I seen this when it came out when I was younger and I had that nostalgia and that affinity for it, I probably would love this.
Well, yeah. But I definitely I seen this at the right age. And again, like I rewatched it and it still hits for me.
Yeah.
But again, I see where you're coming from with the scenes. I understand.
I will say, as I was watching,
it's I guess it's one of those movies. I would say it's underrated, but I guess it's an acquired taste.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I was actually, as I was watching it, I was like, I wonder if Juan still likes this movie as much as he kind of did when he announced it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, for sure. But again, like I understand why people wouldn't like it.
Yeah.
Like again, yeah, the laugh out loud scenes kind of, I can understand why they would drift off towards the middle and the end.
Yeah. I mean, like I say,
This movie did have scenes where I legitimately cried laughing towards the beginning. Still do. And throughout the movie I was still laughing, not as hard as the beginning scenes, but enough to have me still enjoy it. You know what I mean? But again, it's an acquired I guess it's an acquired taste. And again, it's just some comedies work for some people and some don't. And I really, with my comedies, I do like physical comedy, and I do like just silly, nonsensical type movies. They're kind of my favorite. I'm one of the biggest fans of the Naked Gun series and movies like it. And I like a lot of silliness if it works for me in the movie, and it did for me. But again, I guess I understand why other people wouldn't feel the same way.
No, I mean I totally get that.
With my rewatch.
I totally get that. And normally I'm right there with you. I normally love this type of comedy. Just sometimes I watch one, and unfortunately this was one of them that just kind of didn't hit for me. And I mean,
right.
nothing wrong with it. Like I said, there were a lot of funny things. Like even in that interview scene with Farva, he's like, oh, I'm desperate for the job, this and that, and he seems so depressed, and then they start ragging on him, and Steve
It
Zahn
would have been.
goes, well,
It, it would.
Steve Zahn goes, a month on the road with this guy, I'd shove an exhaust pipe through my fucking heart. Like, and he's so straight faced when he says it, I burst out laughing.
And if the director was a little bit stronger and I guess knew how to use Happy Madison production, this would have been a great time to use a lot of cameos that, you could have put Adam Sandler in there. You could have put, Rob
You could have
Schneider
had Adam Sandler. You could have had Kevin Nealon. You could have done the David Spade, the Rob Schneider. Yeah, all of them.
and that could have punched up that scene, right? It would have been made more enjoyable and a lot funny.
But I don't think anybody. I think it's all just nobody
just random
extras.
people, right? And if Adam Sandler's in this movie, he would have put that would have been nothing but cameos from other, his friends, right? Because that's what he likes to do.
Oh yeah, I mean, like, and then from when they actually go on the road, I don't know why I don't know why I liked it in the beginning. Like when they're showing the tape to the station manager, I enjoyed all that. But when they go and they start to randomly flip to like actual nature footage and you hear the narration, I don't know why that didn't hit with me later in the movie. But like this one, for example, when they end up getting to like where the sea lions are, and I think it's Peter Dante is the actor. He comes out in his giant seal suit, and then the very next scene, it just shows
dead.
him getting attacked by a shark, and I'm like, is that what's actually happening? Like, what is I didn't know what was going on, and then all of a sudden they go to the next scene and he's not there, and they're all outside of a hospital, and I'm like, oh, okay, I guess that actually happened. I didn't know what the fuck was going on.
Yeah, unfortunately, this movie should have been a little bit longer. For some reason, they just wanted to fucking straight bullet to the end.
Like it was very cut down.
Mario Kart race. But yeah, if this movie would have had a little bit more time to breathe, especially, and like the comedy was punched up a little bit more, this movie would have been a lot enjoyable for the masses.
I think that's a good point, because it was only an hour and 27 minutes, so it's not like they had a whole lot of time.
They didn't. And if you're gonna make that type of movie with the plot that they went for, I think you need a little bit more time.
Yeah.
Or it should have just been a lot more simple and very less, fantastical with the whole Bigfoot thing. It could have been him just trying to revitalize his dad's show by, actually trying to improve himself and do a
And
lot of this stuff because
taking it seriously.
exactly, because the beginning of the movie kind of sets up what you could have done in other scenes with the animals messing with his father, you know what I mean? And him, being a professional kind of played it off and made it a really wholesome moment. You could have done that with Steve Zahn's character where he's being messed with animals and it could have just went completely left in a real funny way, kind of a mirror of his father, but they just decided to do this Bigfoot thing, which, yeah, I mean, that was, I think, the absolute wrong decision of this movie. I see where this movie could have been great, and but I still had a decent enough time, especially in the beginning, to where it was fine for the rest of the movie. Like I still kind of chuckled throughout, even though my biggest laughs again were most of the stuff that you've seen in the trailer, which is the first 20 minutes of this movie.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very true. Like, and I had mentioned that before. All the funniest parts are in the trailer. Well, maybe not
Yeah,
all, but a good
most
majority
of it,
of them.
about 90%, because I remember the trailer, and I remember I don't think I've seen this in theaters, but I saw the theatrical TV spots and trailers for this.
$6 million, dude. Nobody saw this in theaters.
It still made me curious about watching it when it came to video. So at least it had
I,
that.
I
The trailer
vaguely
had
remember. I vaguely remember seeing trailers for this, whether it be on other like DVDs that I owned or rented, or I I don't know if I ever saw a commercial for it on TV, but I know that I've seen the trailer, and I don't know why I didn't watch it, because back at that time, at the time that this came out, this would have been right up my alley.
It's one of those movies that slipped through your fingers.
It did. I
Like
mean,
Grandma's Boy. Surprisingly, Grandma's Boy is regarded as and honestly, I probably should have done that one. But it is highly regarded as an underrated comedy. Not a lot of people have seen it or even heard about it.
yeah. And as I was kind of thinking this week about some options for myself, for what three movies I'm going to choose, Grandma's Boy was in very serious consideration, and as I
Oh,
thought about it, I was like, oh, there's this one and there's that one. What started off where I couldn't think of anything, all of a sudden I ended up with a list of like 35 different
okay.
movies, and I'm like, well, now I got to fucking whittle this down to three.
All right. Because it's a comedy and that's more again subjective, I can guarantee, even though we're going with your pick next, my next two picks you'll be a fan of. I'm guaranteeing it right now. I'm guaranteeing it.
Just for fun, I'm gonna want to not like them, but I'm probably going to.
For sure. I understand.
Um, I did um, like I said, some of the voiceover that he does. One of the lines that I have written down, is I'm sorry, I'm laughing as I'm reading it off my computer screen in front of me, is when they show the monkeys,
Oh yeah.
and his line is literally, monkeys make up 80% of the world's monkey population.
Yeah, man.
I'm like, what the fuck? Like, I think the
It,
most absurd thing in the world of this movie is that this TV show even actually exists.
true. And it could be that maybe the plot of this movie is not even the plot, but this movie itself, it could be a little bit ahead of its time, because if this was current times this movie was made, then his stuff would have been on YouTube, and a lot of funny voiceover,
Or
especially with
TikTok.
animals, they get lots and lots of views, and you could have used that as a way to explain why his terrible uh way he goes about his animal facts, you could apply that to him. Actually, it's because they're laughing at him, not enjoying his commentary, like, or at least respecting it as a like his father
Yeah.
type. So, you know what I mean? You could have played on that, but no, he would have been canceled and fired like a long time ago if it was
Okay. I need
if
to
it
ask
was in
you
the
about
real
this.
world.
I need to ask you about this because where I said the interview scene kind of went off a cliff, when this scene happened, I was like, I cannot endorse this movie whatsoever.
Is it when Dick dies?
No, it's the fucking turkey scene.
Okay, yeah.
That whole thing went on. It was probably 5 to 10 minutes of this movie, and I was like, this is so, like, I want to fast forward this.
It's one of those things where if you had like, it's just, yeah, it's an ingredient that wasn't necessary, that just, it kind of, yeah, for a lot of people it probably bittered the taste of the entire dish or the movie. But
again, it's one of those things that we've discussed.
It was fine. It was, I chuckled.
Well,
it wasn't unfunny. It didn't make me genuine belly laugh. I did get a chuckle out of it.
But so the way I looked at it is there have been multiple movies that we've done on this podcast that there are scenes that you could just take out, like completely just remove from the movie. They wouldn't affect anything whatsoever. And you could then take that block of time, no matter how long it is, 1 minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and you could use it in a way that actually improves the movie and maybe improves the characters or the story or anything like that. And they could have done that with this whole scene because it adds nothing. Like, it's to the point where
it just, only thing it does. Sorry.
Even after it happens, it's not even like referred to again. Like, you would think something like that would happen. For those of you who don't know, a fucking turkey puts his dick in his mouth.
And it stretches.
And he can't get it out. Basically, whatever. Locked. It's the dumbest thing. But think to a movie like, for example, American Pie 2, when Jim does that with the super glue. At least in that movie, they show him with like the bandage diaper thing, and it's an issue for the rest of the movie. This, the minute they leave the hospital, it's never brought up once again.
Exactly. Or the fact that when they get their whole goddamn teeth knocked out of their mouth, it's that whole go and they get it patched up, and it's a lot of.
And he literally spits out the gauze, and his teeth are exactly the same as they were 5 minutes ago.
Yeah, again, it's a scene that you could have taken out, and you could have used it for character development, or at least development within that squad, or something that would have had lasting effects throughout the movie.
And I'm sorry, I cannot refer to him as Dick. He is Farmer Fran.
Is from freak. What's the Waterboy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
To me, he'll always be Farmer Fran. And shortly after they get introduced to him, I'm sorry, I thought he was getting the Sam Jackson treatment.
What do you mean?
So, you remember Deep Blue Sea?
Oh, I see what you're saying.
So the scene where they're No, not that. No. But there's the scene when they're in the jungle, and the way the shot is framed is he's standing by himself facing the group and the camera, and there's nobody else behind him. And he's giving this speech about what they're going to do and how they're going to move forward. And it reminded me so much of Sam Jackson in Deep Blue Sea before he gets, what I've heard on another podcast, turned into a sim and eaten by a shark. I thought something was gonna fucking come out of the jungle, or something random was just gonna show up and kill him and then disappear back into the darkness, and everybody was gonna be like, what the fuck just happened? And then all of a sudden he stops talking and just walks right through them, and the scene continues. And I went, "Oh, okay." I don't know what it was, but I was just prepared for that. And then when it didn't happen, I might have been a touch disappointed.
Maybe that's what they were going for. They were going for, okay,
Like a
we're
suspense
gonna
builder that
tease
never,
this.
yeah.
But again, this was one of the things that I chuckle a little harder. Did I get a genuine straight belly laugh? No, but I did chuckle a little bit harder just because it's stupid. Like I'll admit it. That scene where they start eating the piranhas that ate Dick, and then they make the realization that they're
Oh, that's so. I will say the scene where so after he gets, yeah, Dick gets eaten by piranhas. I will say that I did laugh pretty hard when they're eating the piranhas and they're basically all shit talking them.
yeah.
And they're like, yeah, fuck you, piranha. How does it feel to be in my stomach now? And like, I was kind of laughing at that, but
Yeah. The way they made the turn, yeah, it wasn't. That could have been punched up. Yeah, this movie could have been punched up. You should have gave this to what's his name, freaking I forget his goddamn name. Patton Oswald. Patton. What's his name?
Yeah, Patton Oswalt.
Could have got
The
him or
comedian?
somebody yeah, he's famous for doing, because a lot of studios or whoever, they give him scripts and he's punched it up. Like he's really famous for doing that, right? Could have gave it to
Yeah.
him to punch it up. This movie needed a punch up. It feels like a first draft, and they just went with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like you say, it feels like a first draft that was like, oh, the movie's due in 3 weeks. Okay, well, we don't have time to rewrite it. We better go get on camera and film it.
But if you had like a more competent director, and they utilized, Happy Madison's, like the actors that are attached to that company, you could have had something that would have been considered. I would consider this, because I don't know your standards for this, a cult classic, a stoner cult classic.
Yeah, I'm sure it would fit in that narrative.
To me, exactly. But
What
again,
did you
I
think of?
thought it would have been well received.
You thought what? I'm sorry, I cut you off.
I haven't I haven't really I don't know a lot of people who's even seen this movie, so I couldn't get a comparison of what somebody else thinks of this movie. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. You know what I think about it?
Exactly. That's why I thought you would have enjoyed it more.
I'm not saying I hated it. It's just I think you might have overhyped it.
Just didn't hit. Yeah, and that happens.
But what about we skipped right over the one of the best cameos of the movie as the world's greatest tracker, whose character name I cannot remember, but it's fucking Robert Patrick.
Oh, the T-1000.
I wish this was the Wayne's World cameo. Oh my god, do I wish this was the Wayne's World cameo.
That's funny. Yeah. That would have been funny. Even though he was a little bit older, but he still was trim.
Everybody still
trim enough to pull it off, right? But
dude, I recently saw a video with him at like a signing event, and this guy brought up a bust of a T-800 skull for him to sign, and Robert Patrick was like, this guy looked terrified because Robert Patrick started. He's like, how dare you come and you give me a bust of this fucking T-800 Arnold piece of shit? Like, this guy looked horrified. And all of a sudden, Robert Patrick goes, well, Robert Patrick goes, I'm kidding. It's called acting.
But some celebrities, they do stuff like that. So I get it. But sometimes when it comes to those situations, some celebrities I mean, he amplified it, but some of them do get a little pissy if it's not their exact character. You know what I mean?
Well, and the funny thing was, as he starts to sign it, he goes to hand it back to him, and the guy goes, oh, could you write to Chris on it? And he's like, oh, now you're fucking really pushing it.
Yeah. No, he knows. That's why he's a beloved. That's why you see him in so many things. He's such a beloved actor, and he knows how to deal with the fans.
Yeah,
And I'm glad that experience for that guy was a
was a
good
good
one,
one. Yeah, because like you say, some actors would have made it really bad.
right? Especially if it's not their characters, their enemy, and
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, I get it. But that was good. That was a good moment.
What wasn't a good moment?
Hey,
Well,
what's up?
like again, like I said, everything shot at night is so hard to see because of the way that it's filmed and the way that it's lit. The scene where they come upon the other, I keep wanting to call them news crew, like in Anchorman, but that's not what they are. The other film team, when they come across them and they've been attacked and basically massacred by natives who they keep referring to as pygmies, which again, 2008.
You can get away with. Oh yeah, that was peak. You can get away with basically anything with comedy.
Oh
Everybody was
yeah,
up for grabs. But
but
yeah,
they
yeah.
once they realize, like, they're like, okay, they're all dead, and they're like, yeah, this sucks and it's kind of terrifying, but all right,
Don't
grab
grab.
their gear, let's move on. And it's like, okay,
Yeah,
so what was the point of this other crew? Like, there's no antagonism, there's no like, even in a ridiculous comedy like Anchorman, at least there's a face to face with the other, like with the antagonist. This, it's just like, oh, they're already taken care of, well, let's just grab their stuff and move on.
yeah. It wasn't resolved. Like yeah, it was. It was. I guess lackluster, especially when these characters were introduced in the beginning of the movie. One of the actors is a famous seed of Two
Yes, he
Face.
is.
Yes, he's a sibling to a famous or couple
That
famous.
that would be Oliver Hudson.
Dude, have you ever
Who
seen Rules of
I was gonna
Engagement?
say, who I'm a huge fan of, is Adam in Rules of Engagement.
He, if you ever watched that show, you would realize that this guy is legitimately hilarious. He's got comedic chops, and I am surprised he's not doing more things
Same.
because I watched Rules of Engagement. First of all, I think it's solid and it's got
It's
a
an
really good cast.
We're talking
But
underrated comedies. That's an underrated sitcom.
but when it comes to characters, he has to be my favorite character of that whole show. He's so funny.
Yeah, I used to love that show, and it seems like most people that I've ever brought it up to, only a handful really know what it is. But everybody who recognizes it and knows the show loves the show.
Oh yeah, it's a shame that a lot of people didn't watch because it got what maybe 6, 7 seasons, 6, 5.
Yeah, it was something like that. My
I loved
favorite
it.
my favorite by far was the when Patrick Warburton and his wife switch sides because he keeps snoozing his alarm, and when the alarm goes off, he hits her, and
My
they end up at the hospital, and behind the curtain, she's
oh
like,
yeah, yeah. They think that they hit her. Yeah. I
that
remember
because
that one.
he's like, I'm sorry that I hit you, and she's like,
It was
no,
an accident. It was an
it was
accident.
my fault, this and that, and the doctors like bursted, and they're like, we need to split you two up for a moment.
Because the way they wrote it, right? They made sure the way she said things, it was very,
It made
leaning
it seem
towards,
like she felt like she was at fault. Yeah,
especially with the way, Patrick's character was his line. It was just, yeah, the way they was writing it and, the lines that were given to the actors and the things they were saying. Yeah, it was funny, man. My favorite is the scene where the wife, I forget her name, but
Adam's wife.
no, the other one.
Oh, the Megan Price is the actress.
She decides to she loses her job or whatever. She starts to make all these cookies, like she wanted to do a cookie
Yeah.
business.
Yes.
And
The
and
whole
the young
apartment is filled.
yeah, and the younger couple, they just so happen to find some weed and they smoke it, and after they smoked it, they get a call to come try out the cookies. So when they get the phone call that they got the cookies, that scene is hilarious. When they get the cookies and the way Buddy explains how good those cookies are, hilarious. And the ending of that scene is them discovering that the kitchen's full of cookies and them running out with like these dishes full of cookies, but they're all falling out. So they got none of the cookies. They all fell out. The way that scene plays, I can put that on and I will cry every single time.
I need to find a streaming service that has that show because I need to watch Rules of Engagement.
It is so funny. But yeah. Enough about superiority.
About stuff that's good. Now we're gonna get back to this
good.
Bigfoot monstrosity. Good Lord! I even have. It's funny because just before. Well, before you see him, I wrote a note and I put, "This Bigfoot is going to look atrocious." And then, like within 3 seconds, he came on screen, and I went, "Yep, there it is."
Right. It's slightly better than the Bigfoot that they used in that fake footage.
Oh yeah, dude, it's a Halloween costume.
Oh, of course, but
he's wearing
it's a comedy.
He's wearing a gorilla suit with a rubber mask.
Exactly. It's a comedy.
Well, what's funny is when they
do like a lot of movies done better have done the whole fake gorilla, but it's supposed to be a real gorilla, but it looks obviously fake gag. But this one, it was just Bigfoot, and the purpose is not for it to look as realistic as possible. It's supposed to look fake as fuck. Yeah, it's comic. But yeah, the fact that they just shot the shit out of it. The fact that they just shot the shit out of it is funny because that's very American. That's exactly what they would have done.
Yeah,
that's why Bigfoot, I think, isn't a real creature, because that's exactly what happened the moment a Bigfoot presented itself to anybody. That it worked for me just because they shot the living shit out of it. But yeah, I can understand why. I can see the critiques with it being fake and stuff.
Well, and even it's even the scene afterwards at night when like Steve Zahn's like, all right, we have to figure out, like, he came at me, right? Like, what did he say before we shot? Like, they're all trying to figure out a way to frame this where, like, they're not going to get blamed for finding the only one in existence and killing it immediately.
Right. But even in real life, that body would still be worth a hefty amount.
Oh, yeah. But then...
even if he killed it or not, that's still a huge story.
Well, then even, like, they immediately cut, because Jonah Hill's like, oh, I think I know how we can save this. And you immediately cut back to, they're back in, I think they're in Los Angeles. And they're bringing this tape to the exec, and they've... I'm laughing now as I remember it, but I was not laughing when I saw it. They've faked Bigfoot suicide.
Yeah.
And they have him hanging.
Because it's so stupid.
Well, he's hanging, and yet his whole body is completely riddled with bullets.
Exactly. Yeah. Again, it would like it seems like something that was a funny idea that was written down that could have been if someone would have punched it up, or we wrote the scene with other people to bounce ideas from. This would have been even funnier. And again, I guess it just works for the most juvenile minds, because
of course you loved it.
I didn't get a big hard belly laugh. It didn't make me cry, but it did make me chuckle because how absurd it was. It was absurd.
Oh, it was absurd, absolutely.
It was so stupid.
But what doesn't make sense,
people that are that dumb that would do some shit like that. So it's like I can't put it past them because they are dumb. And I know people that are that dumb that would probably do something like that. So I just accepted it, man. I don't know. It worked for me.
And for some reason, he's like, well, this is the dumbest thing I've ever seen. Get out of my office. And they all have this big blow up fight. But then the next scene is them getting back together. Well, almost the next scene is them all getting back together to go shoot this shark attack thing. Which, if you want to talk something that looked bad in this movie, and I know it was supposed to, but my God, when they all eat something and like projectile vomit into the fucking ocean for this shark to come and attack. I've never seen anything look more cut and paste. Like it was the level of like E-Bombs World in 2002.
Damn.
You know
Yeah.
I'm right. The way
Yeah.
that shark looks.
Exactly. But yeah, and any other, if this movie was like, any other thing but a comedy, especially a stoner comedy, it would be a heavy critique, right? But
I'm still making it a heavy critique.
it's just one of those things that, they decided to do, even though, it's super fake and they're not trying to go for any type of realism or explain themselves. But
Well, what didn't make sense to me is they show him the video, like the record exec, the TV exec, the video of the Bigfoot thing, and he's like, "Get out! Like you're off the air, whatever." And then the minute they show him the shark attack thing, he's like, "Well, Sky or whatever the other showrunner's name is." He's like, "He's dead, so you're still on the air." I'm like, "But you knew he was dead when they showed you the Bigfoot footage. What's changed?" And this movie has one of the strangest and most unsatisfying endings I've ever seen. When they basically all start laughing, and it's like, okay, cut, and I'm like, that's the weirdest ending to a movie I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's just one of those. Again, they just took a first draft that probably didn't even have an ending. It just went with it. And it feels like that. I mean, I get it. I definitely get it. And I see, but it doesn't ruin anything for me. I still again. It was
Okay, I'm really
more. I did. Obviously, I enjoyed it a lot more when I was younger, but I still got good amount
Oh,
of it.
I know you still enjoyed it now.
And
But I
maybe
will
it is
say
nostalgia. It could be a nostalgia thing. Like I can't necessarily rule that out.
I will
But
say I'm glad that
my
my negative opinions haven't affected, like, haven't made you sit there and be like, oh,
no,
maybe like you know how you hear some people and some like someone loves something and as soon as somebody starts ripping on it, they're like, oh, maybe you're right. I'm really glad that hasn't happened because
dude,
I'd feel
I
kind of bad.
agreed. I agreed because I love the Big Green, and I rewatched that, and that shit is terrible.
Yes, it is.
So for some movies, it definitely works. Maybe because I was such a child. Maybe this movie, because I was more into my, adolescence to, in my, 20s. Uh, Maybe later in life I'll revisit it, and I probably won't enjoy it even as much. And I will, but again, my style of humor it, is what this movie. It was right up my alley.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not praising it for sure, but I just feel like I still feel like it's a very underrated comedy that I feel like if you are just depends on your style of humor. If you do Happy Madison type productions, this is probably more for my end my final thoughts. But yeah, if you're in line with those type of movies, I would recommend it just if you could get past the 30-minute mark. But if you can't, then yeah. But there's so many comedies that shouldn't be funny or shouldn't even make sense that do for some reason, and it's just that's why it's so subjective. I know I've said this many times throughout the podcast. It's just some comedies, even though it's starring people that are funny, sometimes it just doesn't work. And for you, it sucks because I thought you would enjoy this a lot more, even a little bit more. But again, that's just my underrated comedy pick. My
No, I
other
get it.
two, my other two is more, one's adventurous and one is more crime drama. I feel like you will like that a lot more, just because with those, it's very it's a lot less leeway when it comes to being good. You could find more less wildly different perspectives when it comes to those type of movies than when it comes to a comedy.
Yeah.
Because there's lots of comedies that people swear by that I've seen, and I'm just like, I'm not feeling it at all. So
I get it.
I
mean,
understand.
like, I still get me wrong. I still love the movie, but when a buddy of mine we went to see in the theaters, Forgetting Sarah Marshall. Walking out of that theater, if you would have asked me, I would have said right then and there that was the funniest movie I've ever seen in my life.
It's
And
funny.
don't get me wrong, I still love it. I would not put it in that category. So at that time, I think the whole being in the theater with a big group of people really hasn't that kind of an
Oh yeah,
effect.
it definitely does. 100%. I'll
But
definitely sway
so I
your.
wonder if I would have liked this more had I watched it with a group of people, or you know what I mean? Like, because I
Yeah.
just kind of sat and watched it by myself, and I actually finished it a couple hours ago tonight. And I was like, it's okay.
Yeah. Again, it could be one of those movies that is better, like you said earlier, is better under the influence, whether it be a little
Yeah.
bit buzzed off of drink, smoke, whatever.
I mean, it could even be better just the second time, because I remember two movies in particular for myself. The first time that I ever saw both Step Brothers and Napoleon Dynamite, I hated them. I thought they were the dumbest thing. And then
Yeah.
for some reason, I watched them again, and I absolutely loved both those movies.
See, Step Brothers hit for me the first time because again, I like, even though yeah, they're a bunch of grown men acting like babies and they're screaming throughout the movie. I understand like a lot of critiques do not like when Will Ferrell and what's his name,
John C. Reilly.
they team up, right? And like again, yeah, you have to like that style of humor to get it and really, really enjoy it. And
But
yeah, but yeah,
I
I
should
understand.
have loved Step Brothers because I love I love Will Ferrell movies. The two of them in Talladega Nights. Like I should have loved that movie. But even to this day, as much as I enjoy that movie, they're not even the funniest part to me. The funniest part of that movie is Adam Scott with his family singing in the car.
Okay. Yeah, no,
But that's just me.
yeah. And again, I've seen Napoleon Dynamite multiple times. There might be a scene or two that gets me a small chuckle, but that's not a movie that like personally I like at all. Like
And
I
again,
personally
that's a
cannot.
movie that my favorite scenes of that movie are not centered around him. My favorite scenes of that movie is Dietrich Bader as the martial arts instructor.
Yeah, and I'm I like the whole washed up football
Oh,
uncle.
Uncle Rico.
because he is in another show that not a lot of people wouldn't recognize him in the show, but would recognize the show. He was in a show called Martin.
He was in
And
Martin?
yeah, he was like the he worked at the
Oh,
radio. He worked at the radio station.
was he the bald one?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
So that was my first exposure to him. So I knew he was a funny guy, and him in that with a full set of hair and a deep tan, and him like reliving the glory days was pretty funny. But other than that, I don't.
Wow.
I guess like the Juan kind of like that, because I kind of look like Juan, unfortunately, or Pedro. Sorry, Pedro. Uh, Somebody compared me to him, and I can't unsee it.
Just got turned off from the whole thing.
But it's I get like a couple chuckles.
I would have to really be in a
Not
specific mood to watch Napoleon Dynamite now.
Yeah, and even then, like the style of comedy it's very dry.
Oh, it's super dry.
You know what I'm saying? It's not as extreme
No,
as
the comedy
any
in this movie is so overt and
over the
obvious in
top and super laid
comparison.
on thick. Yeah, it's laid on thick. It's over the top. It's reliant too much on improv, and even the whole movie depends
Physicality.
on is just. It seems like it just wasn't. It should have been refined a little bit more, and you could have had like the only thing the things that work are like those beginning scenes that is mostly improv.
Yeah.
Riffing. And if you could have, I mean, even if you just continue that and put a little bit more voiceovers, because that was some of the funniest bits, and just didn't overdo it. And there, like, if I had it my way, I could have, with this concept and this production company, these actors, feel like I could have made a much funnier movie. But again, for what it is, I enjoyed it.
Well, I mean, I think that we've kind of gone through the whole movie. Unless that was part of your final thoughts, I was going to say
Yeah,
we could probably move into that now.
for sure. Do you want to go?
Yeah, you go ahead.
Yeah, no.
I'm actually really curious to see what you gave this as a rating.
Yeah, no. I like I said, you have to have a very specific taste to I guess enjoy this movie. I would only recommend this if you are a fan of other Happy Madison productions and other movies that these actors are in that are the more comedic type movies. I would say don't if you can't get past, or if you find, or I mean it's it's not a long watch, but and the first 20 minutes are the funniest parts of the movie. If you can stand half an hour past this movie, then I think you're in my demographic in more enjoying this movie. But if you don't, then yeah, I guess up until the 30-minute mark, or even 25 or whatever, that's really the real funnier parts. And you could probably just watch those clips on YouTube, and you will laugh for sure because they're really funny. You don't really have to sacrifice a whole damn near 90 minutes, and especially when the majority of those minutes aren't too funny. Other than that, I personally I do like this movie, and I will rewatch this maybe every couple of years, just because being bombarded with so much content that. But this is definitely in my Rolodex of movies that if I'm ever down and I haven't seen this movie, and I need to be cheered up by some moments I know I'm really going to laugh and I'm gonna forget about whatever's bothering me, I will put this on personally. I give this movie a solid 6.
Okay. I'm not going to do that, but
Whatever.
so for me, this whole movie was just so strange. Yes, pun intended. Strange and jumbled. Now I will say, like we had discussed, there are funny parts, but I just found them more in the beginning of the film, as I said. The majority of the rest of it is just really drawn out and kind of a little too stupid for my taste. And don't get me wrong, I love stupid comedies, but this is a little much. Now I'm guessing had I seen it when I was younger, I probably would have much more of an affinity for this movie. But since I'm just seeing it now, it didn't really measure up. Love you, buddy, but I cannot recommend this movie.
It's okay,
And
old
my
man.
rating is actually going to be half of yours, and it's going to
It's
be
okay, old man.
it's going to be a 3 out of 10. This might be my old man yells at cloud episode.
Goddamn Abe Simpson over here.
But
His fist was balled up, shaking in the air throughout the entire review, folks.
and it's funny because I thought of the exact same thing. If you want to see the funniest parts, the best parts of this movie, just go on YouTube. You'll see all the good parts, and you'll avoid all the nonsense in between.
But again,
But
like I
for me, it's a 3, and I
Good
cannot recommend it.
That's racist.
I don't think that qualifies under the definition of racist, but all right.
I'm taking it as personal. No, I'm not. I'm just playing. You're not racist at all. You're actually like awesome. But damn it, man. Damn it. That just means I gotta like really be on my toes when it comes to comedy recommendations.
No. I mean, honestly,
we're on close enough wavelengths, but maybe like a channel or two put on.
But see, I'm willing to try watching it. Like, I'll watch pretty much anything. Whether or not I'm going to like it is something different.
Comedy is very, it's hit and miss with a lot of people, man. Yeah. Even with similar style of comedy, you know what I mean? Just nonsensical, silly. There's so many different movies that are just doesn't make any sense and silly, and you could say those same things in this movie where it's just completely random and even laid on thick, but for some reason they worked better because I guess the direction / writing and or was just more thought out and cared for. Seems like no one really cared enough to make this script better.
Yeah. Well, I think that's gonna do it for this episode of Geeked Out.
What's your movie?
Oh, I'll get there, but first I gotta do my little spiel here.
I already given it.
So as always, give us a follow on our socials, which I will post in the show notes of the episode. And don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. We'd really appreciate it. Now, next week, as a continuation of our underrated movie series, this is my pick. What?
I'm already giving it a 1.
Well, this is my pick, and we are going to watch another movie featuring the talents of Mr. Jonah Hill and Mr. Justin Long. So I'd like to ask you all to join us next week at the South Harmon Institute of Technology and be shitheads with us as we watch Accepted.
Is that unrated?
Dude, there are so many people who don't know this movie.
Blake Lively's in that movie, right?
Yes, she is. This will be our second Blake Lively movie.
Black guy from Stomp the Yard's in that movie, right?
There are people in this movie, but I'll be honest, when this movie is not well known, at least not as well as it should be.
Because the only thing that came out of this movie, and I remember because a lot of boys was saying this line because of the trailer, is something about would you have some taste of my wiener? What was it?
It's Jonah Hill dressed as a hot dog, asking
Would
people.
you have some of my wiener?
He wants people to ask him about his wiener because he's
Ask me
being
about my wiener. Yeah, ask me about my wiener.
hazed into a fraternity.
I remember, because that was featured heavily in the trailer, a lot of adolescent boys were saying that.
I'm gonna give a hot take right now, and I will back it up next week when we do this recording. This what?
I've seen this movie. I like
No,
it.
no,
I enjoy
but
it.
I'm gonna give a hot take right now. It came out a couple years, or I think a year before. This is a better coming of age, high school / college story, or than Superbad.
No, I don't know.
To me, it is.
It's not as Superbad is it's basically about two friends outgrowing each other. You know what I mean? And ultimately accepting that.
I know, but
I'd have
this
to
movie is
rewatch
also.
Accepted
But
with
this
a
movie
more
is also
critical.
them coming together, but at the same time realizing that they have to do things on their own as well.
Yeah,
You'll see. I mean, you'll see. But that's the
I haven't
movie that
seen
I've
it.
chosen.
I can't see. What's the last time I seen it?
It's been a few years for me, but I have a talent of remembering movies that
It's
I
been a
really
while.
enjoy
It's been
quite
quite a
well.
few years. But I remember the beats of the movie.
And then you've even got fucking angry old man comedian Lewis Black.
Oh yeah, he's like the dean, right? Fake dean.
The dean.
And see, I'm not a fan of Lewis Black like that. See, that's not. But I have to rewatch it.
I like some of his
character.
comedy, not all of it.
But no, I thoroughly do enjoy that movie. I just haven't seen it in a long time. I'm pumped to see it for sure.
So, like I said, next week we will watch Accepted, and hope you guys will join us for that. And until next time, thanks to everybody for listening. Thanks for subscribing. Take it easy, everybody.
And ask me about my wiener. Peace.